Oh yeah, I'm Laura. I work in applied analytics, which is a program at Columbia University. I'm also a lecturer in tech policy and innovation concentration. And I also have a small project called the Cybercare Institute, which is what I'll talk about in terms of implementation. And I'm really happy. Yes. Oh, to speak higher. Okay. Yes. So can you hear me in the back? Is that good? Okay. All right. So let's see. So, okay.
But there will also protect.
What's that?
That mic there will also protect.
Well, I don't want to use a mic at this point, really. I don't really have much time. I only have like yeah, I should actually set a timer for myself. I only have like what, like 15 minutes or something like that. So, yeah.
You can run over.
Okay, so this is one of my recent books, Future of Hacking. So this is a book with Bloomsbury. These are some of the people in it. I'm not going to sit and name everybody. We don't have time for that. But you know, it was a good exploration, and I'm really interested in cybersecurity awareness for everybody. Some of my other books, some more research that I've done more recently too. I've been doing some AI research and also doing some research on cyber-enabled human trafficking. And then in the courses that I teach, the very important underlying framework, and can you still hear me in the back? Am I okay? Okay, is that I really care about integrating privacy by design, security by being secure by design, human-centered UX and UI, and just really thinking about these evolving digital transformation literacies, which you all understand, but like I'll mention at the end of this presentation, if I make it there, how like entrenched in lingo we are, and this can be a problem. So if we just skip to the third bullet point here, I think one thing that's really important about public education in disaster management is that it is the backbone of any effective public preparedness effort. If I could just like really think about some common associations, whether we're thinking about hurricanes, medical, power outages, and drug use. And just for you all too, I would like you, if you could just quickly name from the top of your head without pausing, what is the most memorable public-facing campaign for ICS and OT that comes to mind? Just like a public campaign, like public relations, communications campaign. Second, which campaign? What public?
Like awareness campaign?
Yeah, like an awareness campaign or a public education.
Shields
campaign.
up.
Shields up. Yeah, shields up. Shields further up. So, all right. Well, thank you for all the examples. That was good. So and so of course there are some less common associations when it comes to ICS, OT, cyber resilience. So we'll skip ahead. But we know that public preparedness really does benefit from strong interventions, whether that's like classic nudging, behavioral change theory, that a lot of these things that might sound somewhat like theoretical or difficult to deal with do in fact help us to build some like sustainable behaviors. And it can also help us to develop different perceptions. And so, when we think of a fried egg or, kind of make these associations, you can think of things like this is your brain on drugs, or, if you think about remember only you can prevent forest fires. These are pretty baked into our like shared consciousness, right? So this sort of education can be really, there is an ICS education gap, and that many organizations overlook awareness activities. Now, we can think back to the last thing we were saying, of course, about security trainings, right? That these, of course, we all participate in, but that awareness activities are also really important. So research limitation for me on what I'll show you next is definitely time. Obviously, there are a lot of awareness programs out there. Many are under-resourced in general, but they do exist. So this is my pilot that I've been doing for a couple of years. This is Cybercare Institute. Largely at the moment, though, I'm interested in older adults and vulnerable people. So far, a lot of older adults. And so this is me and also Josefina, who's not here today, but we work together with about 4 partner organizations. Here are some of our students and some of our some of our in-person trainings. So we do Zoom as well. So we do in-person and Zoom. Courses are generally free, very low budget, takes my time, but really in terms of budget, almost nothing. geared net for now towards older adults. We collect a lot of survey data, and we've added modules on AI and ICS. So notes on engagement, a good high attendance rate. A lot of everyday members really want to understand fairly complex attacks, ICS OT. I do think that people do have lived experiences through various emergencies, tragedies, war, and have survived fraud. And so I think sometimes we undermine people's existing connections to these situations. And one of my favorite partners in this project is the Identity Theft Resource Center. They've been really great. They do a lot of hand-holding. I think after some of the meetings I've had with like NYPD, district attorney, although those meetings went really well, the enthusiasm and the step-by-step that ITRC does with victims was really useful. And so again, that's just a ITRC, just calling them out again. We do data collection, so we figure out knowledge about different scams and situations. Flexible curriculum, so we have a 60-minute, which is very hard to finish in 60 minutes because people do like to tell war stories. We have a 75-minute with AI safety and a 75-minute with ICS safety. And so, but the new additions are really popular and people really like them. And then within the core curriculum, romance scams, pig butchering, and credit freezes tend to be some of the most popular areas. And then when we go into AI safety, we do integrate audio, images, and definitely try to take some people's like family members, recreate them, kind of create like a realistic grandparent scam of some kind. And then ICS is great because people really understand what critical infrastructure is. They understand that supply chain gets something to your doorstep and that products and services are not necessarily secure by design. So I think actually this sort of base understanding is really important to the students. So in terms of ICS resilience, generally people say they're very happy with the class. They say come back soon. They said, please, why didn't you include Medicare fraud? And they wanted to be more interactive, which I think it would turn like a 60 or 75-minute into a longer day. But if we're working with a community organization, like for example, this is like nestled into like a particular schedule. So we also want to make sure that, that's addressed. So in terms of like ongoing research, we need to do additional data collection, expand partnerships, add additional modules, think about how to do more interaction, even with time constraints, some collaboration with CTLC and so forth. And this speaks again to like this larger ICS gap that exists. It's not, of course, to say that there aren't things out there, because there are. But I do think one of like the core ideas within coming to critical effect that I really liked about the description of this conference was about thinking about all these audiences, right? Workforce, educator, policymakers, community members, even K through 12. And how do we take curriculum models that are subject-based, learner-based, problem-based, and then think about motivation and incentive, like our shared values and how we acquire knowledge. But I do think there is an ICS OT advantage, again, which just goes back to this idea of placemaking, which is that we do take a lot of pride in locations and communities. And so while data, when I teach data subject matter and things can be fairly abstract, I think when you like connected to like a hospital or an actual system, it does give it a lot of, it definitely serves as a good anchor point. And it's good to acknowledge, I think, too, what education is private, semi-private, or fundamentally really public, right? So obviously some virtual learning portals might be more like a semi-public, and so other organizational certifications are clearly quite private, and these are all necessary components of what's out there. But I even think it's like just kind of good to like get a sense of landscape, different sorts of like K through 12 programs, semi-public to public, I would say. Definitely cons and events like this are like semi-public or, even sometimes public. And that, activating public-facing partners like clinics, cities, towns, libraries, museums, and so forth, or underutilized spaces too, like mixed-use spaces. Cool. Of course, there's Critical Infrastructure Security and Resilience Month. What month is that?
October.
Yes, no, I know cybersecurity awareness is, but I was just saying for the CISMR month, so.
November?
Is it the next month?
I thought so.
Is it? It's not October?
I should know this,
Yeah,
but I
so,
don't.
Community partners that are great. So I've done some like work in interviewing with Spy Museum and the German Spy Museum. So, you know, museums are definitely great partners to work with and to think about. These were hypotheticals. Actually, this was just an AI generated. One was a NHS hospital security awareness event, and the other was in the city of Alpharetta. And then I think then I'll just conclude quickly on some research themes. I'm sorry for going this quickly. I hope that, I'm already on the last section, so I think I'll be wrapped up in like 4 or 5 minutes. But some things that have emerged through different research that I've done definitely is that, language and lingo can make things hard for the average person. I think, of course, acronyms are very important to any profession, but I think just having this awareness of like what this can do to people in general is useful. So this is one theme of research that kind of comes out. Silos, right? So silos, just in terms of like social silos, of course, can create a certain level of compartmentalize some of our different functions. In some ways this is good because it makes things more secure, but in other ways too, I think when you strive for like information sharing and in terms of community engagement, it's good to think about also where is it appropriate to break certain silos, right? When we think about this. For me, in everything I teach and I do SBD, PBD, it's more lingo, right? I just said don't use lingo, and I'm like, PBD is really important. So where privacy by design can integrate, like, all the different processes or all of the different ways that we think about public education. So making that early on. And I always love Julie Haney's paper for NIST, where she talks about how boring a lot of these trainings can be, and how difficult it can be to look at a lot of lackluster generic content year after year, and what can we do to make them more dynamic, right? And so, what can you do to make them memorable, whether it's that ice bucket or the bear. And it's not that I think we necessarily need to find some gigantic bear to, represent your efforts, but, there is something to say about, like having some sort of like emotional, memorable connection with a lot of these important issues, especially when it comes to something as important as infrastructure. Thinking about vulnerable populations. And then also, for me too, recently, older adults, but also people with disabilities, health conditions, low income. And then also, I think all in all, we know that just in general, stopping this practice of victim blaming, which becomes this layer, I think, for a lot of people just to take the first step to then make this connection that you talk about this conference sort of also being like an important segue where, you're not only trying to think about, what you do in industry or what you do in the classroom, but also, how do people within your community think about these problems? So yeah, so that's everything. I think I did that in about like 16 or 17 minutes, but I really appreciate you listening, and yeah, thank you very much. So my rapid.
You could definitely take more time. I'm the 3 o'clock. Go for it.
Oh, so
You can answer the question.
yeah, sure. I mean, that's everything. I'm certainly happy to answer a question. Yes. Oh, so you mean with when we are teaching these different cybersecurity awareness classes, what has worked really well for the students? Oh, they really love the classes. So I think one thing that I've learned that's really important is that people really appreciate their own personal safety, and actually have like a better base knowledge of some of these topics than maybe some people imagine, and that also a lot of people themselves are victims. So So I think maybe not undermining the people that you're working with. You can almost start a level higher than you expect. Like if you, the first iteration of the class, we had pretty basic curriculum and like we kind of accelerated pretty quickly, and that was fine. And I mean, we're talking about people who maybe like on average don't have much knowledge at all. But yeah, I think people have a pretty good sense of like personal safety metaphors, especially in terms of like safety practices that they were taught as children. Yeah. That was an important takeaway, I think. Other questions?
The event of like the ICS cross and how did that?
So what we're trying to do right now is first just even teach, well, I think actually we can make it more complicated. So what is critical infrastructure? How do you like operate within it? You know, what are some of the same issues that we looked at in a general cybersecurity awareness framework that you think can also appear within critical infrastructure? And then also now like increasing to also think about, and this is actually a question for you all too, is, you know, how as regular like civilians too, you know, we talked about this earlier upstairs, but like, how can you support your hospital, you know, and like, what can you do? And so I think also having a clear answer for students, which always for me requires going back to an actual place and talking to them because it varies by institution. So that would be a specific hospital in the neighborhood that then I would talk to and be like, you know, talk to the security people there and be like, what can people do, you know, or how can they be involved? But that there are a lot of people who care and they're interested to be more. Yes.
You tell
We do talk about IoT. So we do talk about the fact that all products are not secure by design. And actually the students have a pretty good sense of this, especially the older students tend to turn everything off and they're better at taking breaks and they don't leave everything on, you know? So this is actually not hard to explain to an older group. I would like to be so I'm 41. I'd like to teach this to like my own students who are about in their 20s, right? And then it's like, can you turn this off? And the answer is like, well, no, I'm not going to turn this off. Why do you want me to turn anything off? Like, run your updates. And like, what updates? Yeah, so actually, it's not like a hard lesson to share with like an older age group. Actually, yeah. And everything that we have evaluated so far, I think this goes back to pretty like traditional design principles, which is it is good to work with like traditional marketers and advertisers, especially ones who might be willing to do like a public service announcement out of like the goodness of their heart, but have actually like had some impact in terms of industry, won awards or done well in terms of advertising. So that they're pretty seasoned. And I think it's okay to use in-house design and it's okay to use in-house services, but that sort of collaboration, you're going to reach a certain level of like sophistication output, and that in turn will bring you better metrics. So I think it should be professional, and I think that I don't think it means that if you have someone who works on your team who can at professional level, great. But if it's like someone's like, well, this is my first time using Canva, you know, then maybe you should like think, be like, okay, well, you know, that's great. So you can make higher for that other thing we're doing. But for this particular campaign, why don't we see if this is a deal? And I think that's, well, as the person you're the client, right? And so I think you have influence over that, unless your agency is going to be really pushy with you and make you use that football player, you can definitely push back and be like, you know what, I have to draw the line on football players because, you know, I can't do ICS football players. And they're like, got it, chief. So, yeah.
Fine.
Yeah, thank you.